Good morning, members. Welcome to today's meeting. We have a quorum. Subcommittee on 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation relating to Civil Aviation Ordinance. We will now invite the administration to come in. Item 1 on the agenda, meeting with the administration. Since the previous meeting, the subcommittee has uploaded a notice onto the electrical website to invite public submission. The deadline is 5 p.m. tomorrow. By that time, the Secretariat will invite the administration to give us a written reply on the public submission. On the previous occasion, we have completed discussing the policy matters of the bill of the 4 pieces of SL. Today, we will move on to clause-by-clause scrutiny. During the scrutiny, our legal advisor would advise the committee on the relevant matters. The first piece of SL is Small Unmanned Aircraft Amendment Order 2025. Please refer to CB brackets 388801. Welcome, government officials. Deputy Secretary, any opening remarks? Just very briefly, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for your views on the last occasion. We have explained the policy matters of the legislation. We will now invite Mr. Wong, PAS, to walk us through the relevant legislation. Mr. Wong Junho, please walk us through the scrutiny process. Thank you. Thank you. We will start with the Small Unmanned Aircraft Amendments Order 2025, the markup copy. The first legal notice is number 82 of 2025. Section 1 and 2, commencement date 18th of July 2025, and also amendments to the Small Unmanned Aircraft Ordinance. Now please refer to Clause 3 of the legal notice. We propose to amend the definition. Operating requirements, we are adding the cross-boundary operation of SUA and also adding the definition for Category C aircraft. No questions, please continue. Page 4 of the marked up copy. Just a moment. Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong. Thank you, Chair. Page 3 of the marked up copy. We are adding section 16 brackets 1A. Flights within the Hong Kong territory. Now we are adding cross-boundary flights within the scope of the order. But may I seek a clarification? Operated for flights that the flight is wholly within Hong Kong. This is covered by Section 17 already. But how does that apply to cross-boundary flight operations? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chen. Now, Cap 448G, from the drafting perspective, under Cap 448G, Section 7 specifies the scope, that is, flights within Hong Kong. In respect of flights of the parts of a flight within and outside Hong Kong, the law only applies to the parts of the flights that is within Hong Kong. Now, since cross-boundary flight operation is also covered, in Section 15 of Cap 448G, we are specifying certain conditions for the operation of SUA. Section 16 sets out the requirements for operation. So for ordinary operation, the requirements for operation under Section 16 must be met. Now we are adding Section 16(1)(a). to specify that for the purposes of Section 15(1), it is also a requirement for a flight that the flight is wholly within Hong Kong. So in other words, if the flight is not wholly within Hong Kong, Section 15(1)(a) does not apply. The Director for Civil Aviation needs to grant permission under Section 37. That's also my understanding, Chair. Having read every word of the amendments, I think this is not very convenient because you have to flip through the pages. And also, whenever cross-boundary flight is involved, the Director has to give permission under Section 37. Now, the public have the expectation that the amendment would spell out the workflow for cross-boundary flight operation. But you're now just adding Section 16(1)(a) and also referring back to Section 15(1). You are only specifying flight wholly within Hong Kong, so you haven't mentioned cross-boundary flights at all. So it falls back on Section 37. Whenever cross-boundary flight operation is involved, the Director for Civil Aviation has to give a permission. I understand this is easier because it involves fewer amendments. But I think that after the law has taken effect in terms of the latest requirements and also the changes, you need to communicate them clearly to the public. You shouldn't give the public the perception that the amendments does not involve cross-boundary flight operations. You have to tell them this covers future trial of cross-boundary flight operations as well. The government must be more proactive in communicating your intents. Deputy Secretary. Thank you. Deputy Director, thank you. Cross-boundary flight is our key priority. As suggested by Mr. Chan Siu-Hong, establishing the legal framework is the first step. In terms of the safe documents and guidelines for safe operation and also the manuals, we are going to update them to specify the workflow for the Director General's approval of cross-boundary flights and also the factors to be considered. At a suitable time, we will organize workshops for the trade to explain how cross-boundary flight operations work. Since cross-boundary flight operation involves the governments on both sides, we will communicate with the mainland authorities and align our operation standards. When there is a consensus, we will begin explaining the requirements for the trade. Mr. Shanghai Long. Thank you, Chair. And from my previous communication with the administration, I told the administration that there is concern whether more categories of aircraft will be added. Now, the administration said no. Traditionally, there are only 3 types of aircraft, categories A, B, and C. Now, you need to specify clearly that for aircrafts for SUA under the weight of 25 kilograms, there are only 3 categories. That will be clearer for the insurance sector. Permanent Secretary. Deputy Secretary, thank you. We will explain to the public that for CAP 44HG, it covers SUA under the weight of 150 kilograms. For those heavier than this weight, they will be covered by the future legislation. Mr. Tony Jie, thank you. My question is about Category C aircraft. Section 3, brackets 2D. A SUA in Category C means a SUA with the weight exceeding 25 kilograms at any time during the flight. So it is possible that the weight would change during the flight. So would there be a risk that the aircraft becomes another category aircraft during the flight? And also section brackets 2D didn't mention the maximum weight for Category C aircraft, that is 150 kilograms. We aren't there yet, but still, Mr. Lawrence Wong, would you please carry on with these clause-by-clause scrutiny? Yes, page 3 of the marked-up copy. We are adding the relevant Category C aircraft and also the weight. So the definition for SUA under Cap 448G, the definition would be SUA with a weight not exceeding 150 kilograms. So besides Category A, 1, 2, and B, we are also adding Category C aircraft, that is, aircraft with a weight exceeding 25 kilograms. So for a Category C aircraft, its weight would be between 25 kilograms and 150 kilograms. So Mr. Jie mentioned that during the flight, the weight of the SUA may change. So how will that be interpreted? Thank you, Chair. Now it says the weight of a Category C aircraft would exceed 25 kilograms at any time during the flight. So even after landing, the definition would be based on the maximum or the highest weight during the flight. So if the weight has been reduced after landing, if at any time during the flight the weight exceeds 25 kilograms, it would be still regarded as a Category C aircraft. So even if the weight comes down after the flight, it will still be regarded as a Category C aircraft. Mr. Andrew Lam. Following up on Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong's question, it seems that we are not amending Cap 448C. Concerning aircrafts flying beyond the boundary of Hong Kong. I'm not sure whether Cap 448C covers SUA as well, because it only says machineries or an aircraft. But that regulates any aircraft flying outside Hong Kong, not the other way around. I understand that we need to discuss the matter with the mainland authorities. So don't we need to amend the relevant sections under Cap 448C as well if we are covering cross-boundary flight operations as well? Because that's our policy intent in this exercise. So what about Cap 448C? Do we need to amend them?
副局长。 Deputy Director General, thank you, Mr. Lam, for the question. On CAP 448C, it is related to the 448G, which is on SUA, but it is not applicable to SUAs. So there is no need to amend CAP 448C. After the proposed amendment, we will be amending 448G, so we will cover cross-boundary scenarios, and prior permission is required from the DGCA. As Mr. Lam may understand, for the heavier SUAs, there will be labeling requirements, and then there may be requirement on the nationality of the SUAs. So right now we are liaising with the mainland authorities, the Civil Aviation Administration of China, and see what are the requirements there. And then the SUAs may be carrying goods or maybe passengers in future. So we will liaise with the mainland authorities. And so apart from the legislative provisions, we will have other documents published, which will be promulgated to the trade and the industry. So I just want to understand, so for CAP 448C, it is applicable to SUAs? No, for SUAs, they will be covered by 448G. But for the existing restrictions under CAP 448C, it will be governing the major aircrafts or even aeroplanes. So that set of requirements have a basis. But now we are talking about SUAs, and they will be covered by other documents apart from the legislative provisions. They will have to obtain prior approval for the DGCA, and we will have safety requirements. So after our discussion with the mainland authorities, when we know exactly what to do, we'll promulgate the relevant documents. So these documents outside the legislation will stipulate some requirements. How are you going to enforce them? So is it going to be subsidiary legislation, or is this just some documents for reference, which will be set out by the Director General of Civil Aviation? Thank you. Actually, there are two ways to deal with it. If we put these requirements under the safety documents, what we call the safety requirement documents, then according to the SUA order, the requirements will need to be complied by the industry, and it has the status like legislative requirements. If they breach the requirements, then we can make use of the penalty under the SUA order. So in a sense, it has some legal binding effect. But for guidance, it is another level of documents. So depending on the requirements, we'll set out different documents for different scenarios. If we need legislative binding power, then we will do so. But if they are only for direction and directive, they will only serve as reminders for the industry. I would like to supplement members. For the low-altitude economy is something new. When we started discussion on this, we agreed with the administration that we have to maintain flexibility under the legislative framework. So not everything will be stipulated in the legislative provisions. We'll be making use of safety requirement documents or other advice for the industry to set out the different specification and requirements. And we will set out the different application scenarios. We just talked about cross-boundary service. We will need to liaise with the mainland authority first, and these requirements may not be spelled out in the legislative provisions, and we have agreed to do so as to allow the administration with greater flexibility, so as to pursue low-altitude economy. So on this basis, I hope that we will continue with the clause-by-clause examination. Professor William Wong. Thank you, Chair Lady. I have a question on clause 14, bracket 1. It is stated that it is calculated from the date of the flight, and the information has to be kept for 6 months. So now there is an app from the Civil Aviation Department. Sorry, we haven't come to that clause yet. We are doing clause by clause. We are only on page 4 right now. Let's address your question when we get there. Ms. Carmen Can, do you have a question? Thank you, Chair Lady. I'm not a member of this subcommittee, and thank you for allowing me to attend and raise questions. On page 3 of the markup copy, the definition of Category C aircraft, we are asked to make a cross-reference to Section 3, bracket 2D. So that's why I refer to page 4. Let's go to clause 3D first. That is the clause preceded by a triangle. Is that okay? Yes. I just wonder, why do we spell out exceeding the weight of 150 kg? Now we are saying that any time during the flight, the weight is being calculated and has to be maintained, and it has to be exceeding 25 kg. Then for that particular flight, then that SUA will be classified as Category C. And it is not stated that Cat C aircraft is not below 150 kg here. Why don't you say exceeding 25 kg but not exceeding 150 kg? Maybe the administration thinks that the information is stated in clause 3, bracket 1. That is where we have an upward pointing arrow saying that it does not exceed 150 kg at all times during the flight. But for Category C, it is only up to 150 kg, and you will not exceed that. Can we spell that out clearly here? Thank you, Ms. Can. Ms. Can has a correct observation. Under clause 3, bracket 1, we have first stated what is meant by SUA. And the current provision says that SUAs does not exceed 25 kg at all times during the flight. When we are going to amend that, we change 25 kg to 150 kg. So for this clause, we define what is meant by SUA. And then for 3, bracket 2, we try to spell out what is Category A1, A2, B, and the future Category C aircraft. And we spell out the weight requirements there. Since we already have 3, bracket 1, specifying that the ceiling is 150 kg. So if we look at Section 3.2 bracket D, then you will understand that for Category C, it is exceeding 25 kg, but within 150 kg. We think that this way of drafting is sufficient and has sufficient legal effect. Yes, that's because for 3, bracket 1, you have already amended the weight requirement to 150 kg. Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Chairman, for the definition sections for Category A1, A2, B, and C of aircraft, we have to make reference to the provision within the administration. Is this a common way of drafting in the Hong Kong legislation? Second question. Some colleagues have asked about the question of any time during the flight. What happens if there is changes in the weight during the change at the flight time? Under Section 3, bracket 2, it is stated that there is a different time during the flight. Sometimes they say at all time the weight should not be exceeded. And also they say sometimes it is at all times during the flight that the weight restriction should not be exceeded. So is this sufficient to say that it will not exceed the weight limit during any time? But during a time of the flight, if the weight limit changes, say it changes between A1, A2, B, and C, what will happen then? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for the question. On the first question, I would defer to my colleague from the DOJ, Mr. Alan Lai. Thank you, Chairman. Well, for the drafting of Hong Kong legislation, it is quite common to use this. During the definition section, we try to be clear so that the reader will understand clearly where they can find the more detailed information in other clauses. So this is a common way of drafting. On the second question, Mr. Leung's understanding is correct. Under the current legislative provisions, for example, for Category A1, during all time of the flight, the weight should not exceed 250 grams. But for A2 aircraft, then the weight not to be exceeded is 7 kg at all times during the flight. But if it exceeds 250 grams during the flight time, then it will be A2. So Mr. Leung's understanding is correct. Let's carry on. Let's move on to page 5. On page 5, it is amending Clause 5 of the order. And for Clause 7, we will try to change the application. And we will say that that section have no effect in relation to the scope of application of 16 bracket 1A. Mr. Chan Shih-hong. On page 5, you have a new bracket 3A and B here. And for this section, it is already in existence in the existing legislation. You just added bracket A and B. I have two questions. For bracket 3A and 3B, it says that the scope of application has no effect in relation to section 16(1)(a). We have yet to move on to that section. But if you look at the flow of the provisions, we are all talking about a flight that is wholly within Hong Kong. For section 7 bracket 1 and 2, it is stated clearly that the application is only confined to a flight that is wholly within Hong Kong. But now you have a bracket 3A and B. It looks like redundant to me because you have to make reference to section 16(1)(a). Because it is also stated there that the flight is wholly within Hong Kong. So I don't quite understand why do you have to state it time and again. And it is actually clearly stated that it is applicable to the flight within Hong Kong. So from the drafting point of view, why do you have to do it this way? It seems to be redundant. Second question on bracket 3A. This section has been here to say that the section is subject to sections 8, 9, and 10. So before the amendment, it is applicable to SUAs under 250 grams, but now you're extending it to SUAs below 150 kg. So I'm wondering whether this provision, the Section 8, is still applicable. We are not amending Section 8. It is talking about the enclosed area of residential places. If an SUA that is below 250 grams, if it goes into a restricted area, say a residential area, then you may be talking about individual houses, and it may be a building with 2 to 3 stories. But now you're trying to relax the weight requirement to 150 kg. So why don't you relax the same area as well? Because you may be talking about bigger residential buildings or estates. So for the major residential estates, it will be sort of earmarked for building management. And they may need to use SUAs for delivering goods. So you are confining them or barring them for doing so. And of course, you have to apply to the DGCA every time for permission. So if we want to relax the SUA to 150 kg, then I think we should also relax the requirement for using SUAs within major housing estates like Tai Kwu Shing, etc. So why don't you make a relaxation there, allow them to use heavier SUAs for delivery of goods?
Mr. Wong, thank you. Mr. Chan's understanding is correct. We are not amending Cap 44HG, Sections 8, 9, and 10, and the requirements within. Now that refers to for SUA flights that is wholly within an enclosed area of any domestic premises, and also for research or educational purposes, they are not in scope. But if you refer to the definition for enclosed area under Section 6, it refers to the enclosed area surrounded by hoardings or other installations. Now, definition for residential premises under Section 8, that means any premises used solely or principally for residential purposes and constituting a separate household unit. So for Category C aircraft, they may not easily fulfill the definition for flight wholly within an enclosed area of domestic premises. So we believe that the flights of these SUAs will have to be approved by the Director General. So if there is such a need in the future, we can amend the law further. The chairperson is right, we can take it step by step. Now for SUA flights within large residential establishments, it may pose certain risk during the first phase, so understand the government's position. Now Section 16(1)(a), it keeps saying that the flight is not within Hong Kong or wholly within Hong Kong. So can you explain why you have to repeat that so many times? Yes, Section 16(1)(a), it says that the flight must be wholly within Hong Kong. But why are we also making reference in Section 7 3B that subsections 1 and 2 have no effect in relation to the scope of application of Section 16(1)(a)? So for flights which takes place partly within Hong Kong and partly outside Hong Kong, only the part that is wholly within Hong Kong would be in scope. So we think that referring to Section 16(1)(a) here, it will help us understand what does it mean by the flight is wholly within Hong Kong in Section 16(1)(a) subsequently. Chair, I understand that subsection or Section 7(2), it says that the flight of a SUA that is partly within Hong Kong and partly outside Hong Kong. So that's why you are saying that Section 16(1)(a) has no effect to the scope of flight which takes place outside Hong Kong. But since you're already saying that part of the flight is wholly within Hong Kong, so I don't understand why you are saying that only that part applies. Now, Section 3, subsection 3B, it says it has no effect in relation to the scope of application of Section 16(1)(a). So will that cause confusion? Thank you. That shouldn't be the case. Section 7 sets out the application to the order that applies to the parts of cross-boundary flights that takes part wholly within Hong Kong. Now it says it has no effect in relation to the scope of application of Section 16(1)(a). We are just making sure that Section 16(1)(a) will not affect the validity of Section 7. So Mr. Chan Si-hung's worry is not justified. Ms. Eunice Yung. Now, Mr. Chan asked about the operability of the law. That is Section 7.3. It says it has no effect in relation to the scope of application of Section 16.1a. Now, Section 3.3b, it also mentions if the flight is partially within Hong Kong and partially outside Hong Kong, then the part of the flight outside Hong Kong is not to be taken into account. So does it mean that even the weight of the SUA is not covered by the law if part of the flight takes place outside Hong Kong? Now that brings me back to the categorization of the SUA. We have categories A1, 2, B, and C. So does that also include the loading of the SUAs? You only mentioned the weight of the SUA, but not the goods or the loading of the aircraft. So in the past, we didn't expect SUAs to carry goods. So if loadings and goods are also counted, then SUAs with a lighter weight will become Category C aircrafts. So shouldn't we be more clear that at any time during the flight, including the weight of the loading, that's how Category C aircraft is defined. So it seems that you haven't taken into account the actual operation of SUA, which is goods carrying SUAs. I think the trade understands clearly that the weight includes the loading or the goods. Yes, please refer to Section 3.3a. It says everything installed in, carried by, or attached to the aircraft is to be taken into account. So in the past, SUAs were not used for carrying goods. It is a new thing. So since we have Section 3.3a, it includes everything attached to the SUA with a string or in another manner. So in the English version, it is very clear. Everything installed in, carried by, or attached to the aircraft is to be counted. So there were also questions why the weight would change in flight. Now, I can't think of any scenarios when the weight would increase during flight, but it would be common for the weight to decrease over the flight. For example, in an emergency operation, the loading would reduce during the operation. So we are only counting the highest weight during the flight. Now, if the dropping takes place before the SUA has come into Hong Kong, the weight of the aircraft during the flight outside Hong Kong will not be counted. To elaborate, in the future, for cross-boundary flight operations, there will be behaviors or actions taken by the SUA outside Hong Kong during the part of the flight outside Hong Kong. So there will be requirements requiring that the parts of the flight outside Hong Kong is also approved by the relevant authorities. So in the past, we only say that the parts of the flight inside Hong Kong must be compliance of our law. But now we are spelling it out more clearly that for the parts of the flight outside Hong Kong, the behaviors must be in compliance with those laws of the relevant authorities. Thank you. Let's move on to page 6. Page 6 and page 7. We are amending Section 11 in accordance with Section 6. So besides Category B aircraft, we are also adding Category C aircraft. The aircraft is operated for the flight in accordance with permission granted under Section 37. Please continue, page 8. Page 8, in response to Section 7's amendments, we are adding the insurance requirements for a Category C aircraft in Section 12. Mr. Tony Jie. Thank you, Chair. Now, the categories of the aircraft are the weights referred to the weights in flight, and also in terms of the insurance coverage. Does the operator have to purchase insurance coverage for each flight? Director General. We have set a requirement for a minimum coverage for each flight, but there are different insurance plans. For some, like insurance for cars, it applies to all accidents involving the SUA within a year. So for each flight, they would be covered by the insurance plan already. They cover all the flights which take place within a year. There are also one-off coverage, for example, for certain events. And some insurance plan would cover flights operations during a week's time because testing and rehearsals may be involved. In any event, we require that the third-party insurance has met our requirements. Some questions here, Chair. I presume that the administration has already asked the insurance sector about the matter. Now, sometimes the flight would involve a longer duration, for example, a rehearsal or a longer show. So some insurance plan would cover the entire period where flights are conducted more frequently. So I hope that you have sorted this out with the insurance sector so that it would not undermine the developments of the SUA industry. Now, back in 2022, when the small unmanned aircraft order has taken effect, there are already 110 organizations issued with advanced operation permits. They will have to procure insurance coverage for their operations. Now, so far, the situation has been smooth. Now, under the sandbox, we have also added beyond visual line of sight operation for SUAs. This is a new thing, but we have ensured that insurance coverage is available. In July, we're going to sit down with the insurance authority and the relevant associations to ensure that sufficient coordination is offered in relation to insurance coverage for SUA and low altitude economy. We want to ensure that there are sufficient types of insurance products in the market to cater for the increasing scenarios. So we hope that the scope of insurance as well as the fees would be able to meet the requirements of the market.
Ms. Carmen Ken, thank you, Chair Lady. I'm trying to look at the proposed amendment. Bracket 2, you are now adding bracket BA. For the wording of this provision, you cover SUA does not exceed 75 kg at all times, and for those exceeding 70 kg, it is at any time during the flight, and also the amount of insurance coverage that need to be taken out. But for Section 2A and B, it is stated that if it is belonging to a certain category of SUA, it has to take out insurance. I think we should try to reflect the policy intention in the provision. So what is the difference between Section B and C? The wording seems to differ for these two provisions. The Deputy Director General has told us that they are still liaising with the industry, like the insurance sector, as to what products that they can be provide. But according to Section 11C, it is stated that as long as you need to use the aircraft, then you need to take out an insurance policy. So it is saying that as long as it is having a flight, then you need to have a valid insurance policy. So how are you going to specify the insurance coverage there? Because you are still liaising with the industry. Has this been covered at the last session when we discussed the policy issues? Seems that you are still discussing about the amount of the insurance coverage, whether it should be 15 million or 20 million. Or should we say that it should be an amount to be specified by the DGCA? Can we provide some flexibility in the legislation? Because it is stated clearly here that it is 15 million or 20 million. Since you're discussing with the industry, should you try to specify the amount in the form of an order later? Should it be a higher amount to be specified by the Director General? How are you going to address this? Mr. Chow, thank you. On the question of whether the amount should be specified by the DGCA, we noticed that in the past, the insurance coverage is 5 million and 10 million. And these two figures are stipulated in the SUA order. So the administration's view is that it is better to do it through legislative means. So we want to specify the amount to be 15 million or 20 million, and it should be stipulated in the legislation because it would be clearer and it would be more transparent. I would also like to add that when I say we're liaising with the industry, it is just discussing with them on the production of more insurance products in future. But we have already discussed with the insurance authority and the industry, and they have been providing products for the SUA operators. We have already consulted them, and we have consulted them on the amount of 15 million and 20 million for Category C aircraft, and they accept that. When I say we are continuing our discussion, it is because Category C is a new category of aircraft, and we will only have these aircraft after July the 18th. So that's why we asked them to look at the insurance products. And we understand that now about a dozen insurance companies are interested in rolling out insurance products for Category C aircrafts. But we will continue with our work, and we are not satisfied with this amount of insurance companies. That's why I emphasize that we are having continuing discussion with the insurance industry so that there will be more insurance products for the Category C aircrafts. But on the proposed legislative provisions, the industry has been consulted and they supported us. Well, this is the amount of the insurance coverage. I'm concerned about the insurance premium. As you encourage more and more insurance companies to join, then hopefully there will be changes to the insurance premium. So how can you tell for those insurance companies who are interested to provide products, the premium that they are going to be charged will be conducive to the development of SUAs in Hong Kong? Thank you. Well, we do not govern the premium amount that will be up to the market, but we will be liaising with the industry so as to assess the market levels. Our understanding is that the premium is actually up to market demand, and we haven't heard any operators who cannot operate SUAs or related activities because of the insurance premium. We do have the information on insurance premium, but so far no operators have stated any specific requests. Nonetheless, we will try to continue with our work so as to create a conducive environment for the development of low-altitude economy. Chair, well, I just want to supplement. We now have sandbox projects, and for the sandbox projects, the operators have to take out insurance coverage, and the insurance companies have been providing insurance policies for them. There is a continuing discussion, and the sandbox applicants or operators find the insurance premium acceptable. In future, if more insurance companies will come into the market, then hopefully the premium will be driven down. But for the time being, the premium is not prohibitive for SUA operations. Yes, we understand that. Next, Mr. Shanghai Long. Thank you, Chair Lady. For the SUAs, they have to take out insurance, especially for commercial operation. They have to take out third-party insurance. This is very important. We have to cover the operators and also the third parties. I have reflected to the administration that the legislative provisions have been too specific. You are stating that the weight should not exceed 75 kg and the insurance coverage will be 15 million. But for a weight exceeding 75 kg, it will be 20 million. I want the administration to say that the 15 million and the 20 million should be the lower limit rather than the upper limit. I have also pointed out that we have to think about the premium to be covered by the operators. I think the SUA applicants, operators, they have been using SUA, say, for taking pictures, but then even if providing a footage of 1 to 2 minutes, the cost will be over $10,000. So we are trying to pursue low-altitude economy, and we hope that there will be more application scenarios and it will be more affordable. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shang, for your suggestions. For the insurance to be taken out for Section 12, bracket 1B, we have stated that the coverage of not less than the amount. So it is stated clearly there. We understand that some operators have actually taken out insurance coverage greater than the amount we specified. For the different application scenarios, we will continue to liaise with the trade and the industry. When the market grows bigger, they will be more willing to come forward. We also have been liaising with operators not just in Hong Kong but also in the mainland, and we are trying to exchange data or collect data with them. So we want to have more data concerning safety, and we have been liaising with the stakeholders so that the insurance industry will collect more data on safety and roll out products. Well, thank you. I hope you will spell out clearly that the amount should not be less than 15 million or 20 million. Please use the wording not less than before these two figures. Also, we have to take into account the situation with Hong Kong. We really don't have a very big market for the moment. Well, my understanding is that the current drafting reflects that it is not less than, because they cannot take out insurance less than 15 million. So maybe there is no need to add the wordings there. Next, Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, Chair Lady. I'm also concerned about the insurance issue. I hope the administration can explain what is meant by any time during the flight time. So for flight time, does it mean that I am having a flight this time? Or does that mean that all the time when I use this SUA? Let me quote you an example. Say the SUA is 50 kg and it can carry a load of 30 kg. So for today, it is only carrying a load of 30 kg, but next day I may be carrying a load of only 20 kg. Then I will not exceed the 75 kg limit. So what is meant by any time during the flight? Do you mean a particular flight? Or say the SUA can be used for 3 years? This requirement will cover the 3-year period. Mr. Chow, we are talking about a particular flight, so the insurance coverage is for the flight concerned. It is not concerning other time of the SUA. For example, if the whole weight of the SUA is only 70 kg, then insurance is only 15 million. But say if last month it has carried a load exceeding 75 kg, then that's not taken into account. So we are only looking at flight by flight situation. So that means the operator will have to take out insurance policy one at a time, because the load to be carried may differ. So if your requirement is like that, then you are requiring the operator to take out insurance for every flight. Is it very cumbersome? I think members' understanding is correct. For the operator, it may not be carrying the same load every time, but I think the insurance company will roll out different products. For example, they will be covering a certain mode of operation, and there may be a ceiling on the load to be carried by the SUA. Then the premium will be more relevant to the mode of operation. So as the Deputy Director General has pointed out, before the implementation of the legislation, we will continue to liaise with the insurance industry so that they can map out suitable insurance products for the operation of SUAs. Well, your explanation is correct. The Deputy Director General is saying that you are looking at the flights one by one. You are not talking about all the time concerning the SUA. Otherwise, it will be very confusing. PAS. Well, under Clause 5 of the SUA order, we have stated out the meaning of a flight. So for a flight, that means it takes off and it lands. I think the current definition is clear. I think it is basically clear. Next, Ms. Carmen Can. Well, I noticed that you haven't answered my point about the drafting of Section BA bracket 1 and bracket 2. You are using different wording. For BA bracket 1, you're using at all times during the flight. For BA bracket 2, you're using at any time during the flight. As I have explained earlier, when we try to define the category of aircraft, we refer to the weight. For Category C aircraft, it ranges from 25 kg to 150 kg. So if at all times during the flight, it does not exceed 75 kg, the insurance cover requirement is 15 million. But if at any time during the flight it exceeds 75 kg, then it is 20 million. So we're trying to cover the situation where at times it exceeds 75 kg, but at other times it doesn't. So we use a requirement for 20 million. The same requirement is not applicable to category A1, A2, and B, because for the other categories, the weight requirement is stipulated clearly in the relevant provision.
Chair, I agree with Mr. Eric Yim's observation. Before we had category C, SUAs did not carry any goods or loadings, but now category C aircrafts are those which are goods carrying SUAs. So we need to consider whether the insurance industry is able to provide the relevant insurance products. If during each flight the SUA operators have to procure different insurance products based on the different loading, it would not be convenient. But that's a business decision. There are food delivery companies which need to deliver many goods each day. So the deal they have with the insurance company would be an insurance product which cover various flight paths, different duration of flights, and also different weights. That depends on the negotiation between the companies and the insurance companies. This experience is the mainland already has this experience. So of course we hope that our insurance companies can offer as many choices as possible to our operators. Now the SUA insurance business is just starting, so we hope that there will be more flexibility. Mr. Dennis Leung, Section 12, brackets 2BA, it says at all times during the flight. So it's obvious that it is a case-by-case scenario. And also, the SUA operators will have to submit each flight record to the insurance company after the flight. Now, authorized insurer, there is a definition. Section 5C, it says the United Kingdom. So should we amend this term during this exercise, or should we leave it to another statute law amendment exercise? Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Section 12, brackets 2A. In respect of a flight, your understanding is correct. For each flight, there will be a different insurance requirement. Of course, like the chairperson said, it is up to the negotiation between the SUA operators and the insurance companies. For Section 5C, United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, there is an organization of underwriter known as Lloyd's, so that doesn't involve any statute law amendments. Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you, Chair. Let me tell you one scenario and see if the government agrees with my interpretation. Now, under BA2, it says at any time during the flight. Why? Because the SUA itself may weigh more than 75 kilograms even before goods is placed on them. So that's why at any time, an insurance product with a coverage of $20 million must be procured. Now, if the SUA itself weighs more than 75 kilograms, even without the goods, you need to procure an insurance coverage of $20 million at all times. Same for a truck, say a 3.3-ton truck or a vehicle. For a bus, it weighs more than 3.3 tons itself, so that's why the insurance coverage must be higher for buses. Yes, you are correct. Ms. Eunice Young. Now, authorized insurer and also the term United Kingdom, I don't have much opinion with it because the more choices, the better. But should we consider including the mainland insurers as well? Because for cross-boundary flight operations, the operators may choose to procure insurance in the mainland for the parts of the flight that takes place within mainland. So should we offer more flexibility in terms of legislation? Would you recognize the mainland insurers as an authorized insurers? Because you are mentioning the UK, but you are leaving out those in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. What about them? Why just the United Kingdom? I believe that is a historical reason. So like Mr. Dennis Leung has asked, should we change them in future statute law amendments exercise? Shouldn't we offer more choices to the users? P.S. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Eunice Young. Now, the definition for authorized insurer. We are not amending the definition for authorized insurer this time around. It says it means an insurer authorized under the Insurance Ordinance, so that is local insurer locally, and also association of underwriters approved by the Insurance Authority or Lloyd's. So Lloyd's is a very popular underwriter chosen by many internationally. Now, Section 12, brackets 4, it says that the director may accept any insurer for the purposes of this subsection. So there is already flexibility. So depending on the developments of the insurance market for SUA operations, we will see whether more insurers have to be recognized. Chair, I think it wouldn't hurt to add insurers from other jurisdictions as well, especially the mainland. It seems that you are excluding the mainland insurers. We want to cover cross-boundary flight as well. So the weight of the SUA and also the insurance for the parts of the flight within the mainland is excluded. Mainland insurers will definitely be involved. Even though you are not changing this subsection in this exercise, why don't you write it down as well that the insurers in the mainland will be considered and recognized as well? Deputy Secretary, that already exists in Section 12, brackets 4. The director may accept any insurer. So that already covered the suggestions made by Ms. Eunice Young. Chair, I'm just talking about the optics. If that's the case, why don't you delete subsection C as well? You mentioned the United Kingdom, but you have neglected other places. It seems that you are excluding other places like the mainland. If that's the case, why don't you just keep subsections A and B? I know C, the underwriter in subsection C is a popular one used by many. So why don't you change C to the effect that the director may accept any appropriate insurers without mentioning the foreign country? I don't need to specify and single out one foreign country for that purpose. It's an issue of the optics. Thank you. I think there are two angles to it. First of all, under the SUA order, there are some insurers that we accept. So there are authorized insurers, and then there are insurers accepted by the director, meaning non-local insurers. So what's the definition for authorized insurer? There are three meanings, including underwriters known as Lloyds. That refers to the definition under Cap 41. That's the definition accepted by the insurance industry. Under the SUA order, we have already provided for the acceptance of non-local insurers. I think I've made myself clear. If you said Cap 41, so why don't you just say accepted insurers under the definition of Cap 41? I think that's more clear. You can just refer to Cap 41. Now you are mentioning one country, but not all the other possibilities. I know that besides these three, there are also other insurers accepted by the director. So why don't you just say, please refer to Cap 41? That's the most inclusive definition. Ms. Yong? Now, Section 12.4, it says the director may accept any insurer for the purposes of subsection 1C2. I think that has already covered all the other insurers. It seems that this provision has already met your purpose. So why don't you delete subsection C? I can't convince myself why you are mentioning one country but not the others. If you are saying that the director can accept all other appropriate insurers, why do you have to keep C and the one in United Kingdom? P.S. Thank you, Chan. Thank you, Ms. Yung. Now, under the Insurance Ordinance, there are lots of references to Lloyds. Now, first of all, we are not amending the definition of authorized insurer in this SUA order. And second, we want to amend the order in the most expeditious way. And also, Cap 448C and Aviation Order 1995, we want to amend these legislation as soon as possible to enable more application scenarios under the sandbox for SUA. If we need to change the definition of authorized insurer, that may involve amending the definition in Cap 41 as well. That would be a more complicated exercise, and that cannot be easily done in this exercise. But we will convey Ms. Ines Yong's views to the FSTP. No more questions. Let's continue. Page 10. Yes, Chairperson, now we are at page 10 of the marked up copy. In response to the amendments in Section 8. Section 14, duty to keep information recorded by safety system. These information must be kept for 6 months, and they must be accessible in Hong Kong by an authorized officer. Professor William Wong. Now my question is about the one-stop portal in relation to SUA operated by the CAD. That's the app. So will the information be kept on the app for 6 months? P.S. Thank you. The statutory requirements for keeping the information for 6 months is that the operator has to keep the record for 6 months. Now, our SUA platform or portal does not come with the function to store the record for the operators. Now, we think the responsibility is with the operators. Now, since we don't want to burden the ESUA app, that will not be a function. Will you consider that since we are digitalizing your service? Now, concerning the function of the ESUA app, we are considering an upgrade. So we will consider Professor William Wong's suggestion to do that the next time around. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Now, subsection 14(1)(a) brackets B. In English, it is accessible. In Chinese, it is 接達. So just now, the Deputy Secretary mentioned 獲取, obtain. Now, obtain is a very clear word. Accessible, on the other hand, is not very commonly used. So whether it is accessible or 接達 in Chinese, does it mean connected? To say for access rights, it means whether you can have access, whether you have the clearance to access the data. So here, do you mean having access for use or for review? So access for what? Or can you simply use connect? So that's my question. What is the purpose of this provision?
DDJ. Well, the objective is to state that the information has to be kept for 6 months and it will be accessible within Hong Kong. So it includes the information has to be accessible, meaning that within 6 months, if there is some investigation underway, then we'll be able to do so in Hong Kong. For the new bracket 1B, it is applicable to all operations, including the advanced operations. For the reasons behind, there are standard operations, which is not advanced. So the information has to be kept for 6 months, but they don't need to be accessible in Hong Kong. So there is a difference. For the information to be accessible in Hong Kong, it covers the scenario of the advanced operation. If some investigation have to be conducted, then the operator cannot say that the information is available, but the information is outside Hong Kong. This is not permitted. For the advanced operation, then the information must be accessible in Hong Kong. There are different ways to go about it, but this is a new requirement. Well, Chairman, so you're not saying that it can be connected, then that is okay. I have looked at the Patents Ordinance before and how they use the word of accessible. For example, if there is an e-book, then there may be different ways to access the e-book. It is just for reading it. So it is not just for connection. So you may be investigating or you may be using the information. But the DS has said that you have to obtain the information because for the English version, you may use the word require or inquire. Well, when I look at the wordings, my understanding is that the information, so long as it is connected, then that's okay, and you may not use it. But now you talked about investigation, you talk about collection of evidence. So would you like to have a different wording? Because the word accessible seems to be very restrictive. PAS? Well, thank you, Chair. Our objective is very clear. The information has to be obtained by us for us to take law enforcement. But for the law of drafting point of view, we think that the word accessible or 接達 in Chinese is adequate. So I would like to know whether there's any supplement from my DOJ colleague. Thank you for the question. For the word accessible, it is having a rather wide scope. As the member has stated, it is obtaining of information, and we can use different ways to obtain the information. That's why we want to use a word that is wider in scope, in meaning. When we use accessible, it means it can be obtained through the, say, internet or other ways. In order not to use a too restrictive word, we would like to use the word 接達. Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't quite accept this explanation because, they are saying 獲取 is narrower in scope than 接達, but I think it's the other way around in Chinese. I just want to put it down on record. So the administration will obtain the information and use the information. Please put that down on record, and I accept that. Well, even if you don't change the English wording, I think you may consider amending the Chinese version, because I beg to differ. Well, I think the main purpose of keeping the information for 6 months is that if anything happens, then it is kind of like a black box. It will facilitate the collection of evidence, so it must be obtained and used. So I think common sense will say that the information can be obtained and can be used for investigation purpose. Legal advisor. Thank you, Chair. This is talking about the accessibility of information. So will you try to promulgate a paper to explain to the operator so that they would know what to do? Didi? Well, for the safety requirements documents and other guidance, we will spell out clearly the requirements under this clause and how it will operate. Ms. Eunice Yong? For Section 2 ABC, I wonder whether you're going to use the word and or. So these offenses may be committed, or these offenses may be contravened at the same time, one by one or together. So how are we going to deal with the situation? I noticed that after a semicolon, usually you have the word and or the word or after it. Who will take this question? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Young. If we look at the clause 14 bracket 2, it is stated that if subsection 1 or the new subsection 1A is contravened, then each of the following persons commits an offense. So that means these persons will be committing an offense. As to whether there is a need to add the word and or the word or, I think the current drafting is clear enough. I think there is no need to have amendments at this stage. Let's carry on. Page 11. Let's look at page 11 and 12. We are looking at clause 9 of the amendment order. For section 16, we are adding a section 2 bracket 1A, meaning that for the flight that is wholly within Hong Kong, then section 15 bracket 1 will be applicable. So to put it simply, it means if the flight is wholly within Hong Kong, then they will comply with the requirements under section 15 bracket 1. To the contrary, if the flight is not wholly within Hong Kong, then it does not comply with section 15 bracket 1, which means for 15 bracket 2, it has to be conducted within an enclosed area, or according to clause 37, it has to apply for permission from the Civil Aviation Department. So we've been talking about cross-boundary vehicles. This means that if it is a cross-boundary flight, they have to obtain permission from DGCA. Page 13, it is concerning Clause 10 of the amendment order. It is on application for permission, and we add clearly that for Category C aircraft, permission is required. Then page 15, Mr. Dennis Leung, you have a question on page 15? Yes, that's correct. For clause 37, bracket 4, it is saying that the director may refuse to grant a permission if the director considers that it is inappropriate to do so. So will the director spell out the reasons, or will the director give direction as to how the application can be revised and they can resubmit the application for permission? Thank you, Mr. Leung, for the existing provision. Mr. Leung's understanding is correct. For section 37, bracket 4, the director can refuse to grant a permission. But for the actual operation, if the applicant wants to know why the permission has been rejected, I think the CAD will be most willing to explain the case to the applicant.
係啦。
Page 15, this corresponds with clause 11 of the amendment order. That means the information is required to be kept in Hong Kong and accessible in Hong Kong, and it is a corresponding amendment. Page 16, 17, 18, it is the amendment to the schedule, and we spell out the fees regarding Category C aircraft. Since we want to promote low altitude economy, the fee is going to be 0. So we have completed scrutiny of the SUA order G. Now let's move on to the next one. Which paper? We are going to look at LN 83, the legal notice. It's an amendment to the Aviation Hong Kong Order 1995, Amendment Order 2025. So first of all, we stipulated the commencement date will be 18th of July 2025, and also we would amend Cap 44XC. For clause 3, we will add new provisions and to cover unconventional aircraft. So first of all, clause 82A, we state that the CE can issue practical guidelines concerning the unconventional aircraft. So we have a definition for unconventional aircraft here. Ms. Carmen Ken? Sorry, I would like to go back to page 18. The fee to be subscribed is now 0, but when I look at section 71, the schedule actually empowers the Director General to specify the fees. However, if we look at section 71 of the SUA order, in future, if a fee has to be imposed in future, I would like to know what is the fee waiver period. For the moment, we are planning to waive the fee for 3 years. So in future, if you want to impose a fee, do you have to amend the legislation? Because for Section 7, bracket 1, it is stated that the fee has to be stipulated in Schedule 4. So how are we going to make amendments? Because here you only say that the Director General can waive the fees or reduce the fees. It doesn't seem that the director has the right to impose a fee. Do you need to amend the law in future? Yes, that's correct. We have to amend the schedule to the SUA order. Is it through negative vetting? Well, according to Section 2 and 71, we have to make amendments then. Yes, they have to come to the Legislative Council for amendment. Is it going to be done through negative vetting? How are you going to go about it? ODS, it is the same as the procedure that we are going through now. It is a negative vetting.
Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. About the term unconventional aircrafts. Section 82A, the interpretation refers to Article 82C(2). So it seems that there is great flexibility to the definition. The definition for unconventional aircraft can be expanded or interpreted very widely. I just want to make sure my understanding is correct. They may cover aircraft or SUAs we have never seen as yet. Yes, our intention is to make the scope as wide as possible. That's why we use the term unconventional aircraft. Now, with the advancements in technology, there are lots of developments in the navigational system and the propulsion system of the SUAs. So that's why we have drafted the interpretation so. So the actual definition is at Section 82C(2). It says the instrument must specify a class or description of aircraft for the purposes of this part. So under your existing policy, how do you categorize the aircrafts into different classes or descriptions? Mr. Lawrence Wong, Chief of Flight Standards of the CAD. Thank you. We are now preparing the practical guidelines for SUAs, and we are trying to be as forward-looking as possible. We will cover the unconventional aircrafts which appears in our sandbox. Now, under the traditional or conventional definition for aircrafts, there are already some interpretations already. So we are trying to expand the definition to cover all the aircrafts which are not yet covered by the conventional definition. So that's how we specify the class or description of unconventional aircrafts. My question is, what are your standards for classification or description based on the type of fuel or propulsion method, or what is the basis? Now, for conventional aircraft, it is mostly for regulating traditional planes or helicopters. So it depends on the manner of propulsion or the lift generated. In terms of weight, we will refer to the practice in the international world and the country to specify the weight and class. Mr. Chan Siu-Hong, my question is similar to that asked by Mr. Andrew Lam, but I want to go deeper into the workflow. Now you are adding session this new part, trials of unconventional aircraft under Cap 448C, because you want to retain the flexibility. I agree. But you need to spell it out clearly to the potential trial candidates. What do unconventional aircrafts mean? Now, Section 82A interpretation, it says unconventional aircraft means an aircraft falling within a class or description specified under Article 82C(2) of this order. So if you look at Section 82C, subsection 2, it only says instrument. The instrument must specify a class or description of aircraft for the purposes of this part. An instrument, 82C(1), it says the chief executive must from time to time issue an instrument that they consider suitable for providing practical guidance in respect of this part. So having read the entire new Part 9A, I still have no idea what unconventional aircraft means. I know at present it is very difficult to define what unconventional aircrafts are. So why not just simply say that if the chief executive or the director general of the CA certifies that they are suitable for trial, then they are unconventional aircrafts. Now, 82C(1) says the CE will issue an instrument. So I want to know, why did you draft the provision so? If there is a potential candidate who would like to trial unconventional aircraft, what will the workflow be? I know there will be practical guidelines in the future, but at present it is very difficult to decide whether the definition for unconventional aircraft is clear enough. P.S. Thank you. I will explain the drafting of the provision and then I will defer to my colleagues about the workflow. Now, why do we need to define unconventional aircrafts? Because the entire Part 9A empowers the chief executive to approve the trial of unconventional aircraft upon receipt of application, and also to announce that certain parts of the Air Navigation Hong Kong Order 1995 does not apply to the trial. The director will be empowered to exercise the power as well. So under Section 82A, we need to define the term unconventional aircraft. The definition may change over time, and it is more technical in nature. So you think that it would be better to spell out in 82C that instruments would be issued to provide guidance. That would be more forward-looking. In terms of the workflow, may I defer to the Acting Chief Operations or the Deputy Director General of Civil Aviation. Now, instruments, for example, it may refer to aircraft with a certain type of propulsion system. For example, paragliders are not included. They are unconventional aircraft, but they do not meet the propulsion requirements. Sorry, allow me to interject. That's exactly my point. Some unconventional aircrafts are not covered by your definition, so you know which ones you are trying to cover. So to avoid doubts, why don't you give some examples? Of course, maybe not in the subsidiary legislation, but in the future, in the practical guidance, you should give some example. What qualifies as unconventional aircrafts? So that interested parties may make an application to the chief executive or the Director General of Civil Aviation to trial unconventional aircrafts. Yes, the instrument I've mentioned, that is the chief executive, will issue instrument concerning the conditions to be met for the safe conduction of the trial. Now, since we are trying to be as forward-looking as possible, even when we give examples, we will add that there will be flexibility and there will be exemptions. So we will surely lay down the conditions in another instrument. Mr. Chen Xihong mentioned other types of propulsion or energy system, for example, hydrogen. So we will definitely provide flexibility for that. And we have communicated with the trade before introducing this change. We have organized some 20 discussion sessions with the trade, including how the trials should be conducted. After the law has taken effect, we will make clear announcements on our website. And we will also reach out to individual stakeholders in the trade to explain to them the requirements. Ms. Carmen Khan. Chair, I would like to confirm that there is only the English version for CAP 448C. Okay, Section 82C, the definition for unconventional aircraft. 82C brackets 2 is the definition. So it says the instrument must specify a class or description of aircraft for the purposes of this part. But not just subsection 2. Subsection 3, a class or description of aircraft may be specified under paragraph 2 of this article if the chief executive is satisfied that the class or description of aircraft is unconventional. So it seems that it is a loop. As long as the CE considers the class or description of the aircraft fits the definition of unconventional, then that's the definition. So shouldn't 82C brackets 2 be sufficient? And also in terms of the actual operation of the provision. Does the instrument mean practical guidance, and what approach will you take? Will you define the defining features of conventional aircraft, and those which do not meet the characteristics of conventional aircraft will be considered unconventional? Or does it simply mean that if it's not an ordinary plane, it is an unconventional aircraft? PAS, please. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Carmen Khan. About the definition. We think that it is sufficient to define unconventional aircraft by referring to Article 82C brackets 2. Under Article 82C, the instruments referred to in Part 1 refers to unconventional aircraft. 82C brackets 3 mentions that the chief executive would consider what description or class will fit the term unconventional. So that brings you back to subclause or subsection 2. Mr. Wong. Now these aircrafts mainly refer to those SUAs with a weight exceeding 150 kilograms in the context of low-altitude economy, and subject to the fulfillment of certain safety requirements, even passenger-carrying SUAs are covered. But we have not covered SUA for hire yet. Now, SUAs must be propelled by energy. For example, paragliders are not covered. Still, for exceptional circumstances, the director may consider individual cases even though some conditions are not met. there are many unconventional aircrafts with more propellers or engines than traditional aircrafts. So they will be considered as well. So it seems that you are trying to offer as much flexibility as possible. So it's not exhaustive. That's natural because we are trying to be innovative. There will be some priority to goods carrying SUA and then passenger carrying SUAs. So you didn't spell out the factors to be considered by the chief executive. So sufficient only means sufficient flexibility, but not sufficient clarity. So I think we need to agree that we need to be innovative. That's why we are just offering sufficient flexibility to empower the chief executive, but not spelling out the conditions to be set of factors to be considered by the chief executive. In terms of drafting, 82C1 says the chief executive must issue. So does this also include updating the instruments to align with the developments of unconventional aircrafts?
Are you going to authorize the DGCA to do so? I think it is not the CE trying to approve each and every unconventional aircraft, right? Deputy Director General, can you explain this? Well, actually, the DGCA will be authorized to give approvals. For the factors to be considered, it will be spelled out in an document to be promulgated, and these safety requirements have to be met. And also, apart from this document, if the applicant have complied with all the safety requirements, they have to obtain a permission from the DGCA for the trials. This is to ensure aviation safety and public safety. And we hope that there will be suitable trial flights to be conducted. For the current drafting, the specific requirements will be spelled out in the relevant documents to be promulgated after the law has been passed. And we have liaised with the industry, and we will continue to publicize the requirements to them. Which provision are you going to empower the DGCA? It only states here that the CE must from time to time issue an instrument. Thank you for the question. I think members' observation is correct. It is not stated in the legislative provision. We actually rely on the power under Cap 1 to authorize the DGCA. We think that this is a very technical instrument, so that's why we think that in future the CE will authorize the DGCA to look into the daily operations. Members also asked whether this will enable flexibility. The answer is yes, because during the last discussion on policy issues, we talked about the trial flights and we have to embrace new technology. So that's why we say in 82C(1) that the CE might from time to time issue an instrument. This is in light of the technological advancement. He can update the practical guidelines. So in future, we will have a specific piece of legislation stating clearly what type of aircrafts are we talking about. So at this stage, this is only a transitional arrangement. Well, Ms. Ken, when we talk about the policy issues, we have covered that. So it is not stated in the paper, but we have already covered that at the last meeting. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Chair Lady, we're now talking about the unconventional aircrafts and how to define them. I think we have to define what is meant by conventional aircraft. If we look at the information, there are 4 types. There are gliding and also other type of airships. And also we have airplanes with only 1 wing or double wings, and also other aircrafts, and also those that can be vertically take off and landing. And also we have helicopters. We also have helicopters with rotors. And we also have other types of helicopters, and we also have paragliders, etc. So I would like to know whether under the current legislation, is it already clearly stated what is meant by conventional aircrafts? If the answer is yes, then anything falling outside that will be unconventional aircrafts, right? Mr. Lawrence Wong, Chief of Flight Standards. Yes, the understanding is correct. For the conventional aircraft, they are stated in Schedule 1 of Cap 4 for XC. So for all these aircrafts, they will be duly recognized by different organizations in respect of the maintenance, repairs, etc. So we already have the clear definition of conventional aircrafts. Now we want to amend 44XC to include Section 82 ABCD to cover aircrafts which fall outside the conventional type of aircrafts, so that we can cover trial flights of such unconventional aircrafts. Okay, we have completed scrutiny of this paper. Let's move on to the next one. The Hong Kong Civil Aviation Investigation of Accidents Amendment Regulation, paper CB bracket 388X/2025 bracket 03. DS, please take us through page 1. On Legal Notice 84, we are trying to amend the Civil Aviation Investigation of Accidents Amendment Regulations. All these are technical amendments, and they will not affect the operations under the legislation. Let me explain them one by one. On page 1, we add the definition of serious damage, and we change the word tin to yap in Chinese. And on page 3, we put clause 21 under 21A. On page 6, we have an amendment concerning the dates. On page 7, we also talk about the please wait, Mr. Tony Jie. I noticed that you have a new clause 3A, the extension. Generally, how do you go about the extension? Is it an unlimited extension? The extension is for 30 days, so it is only a one-time extension for 30 days. Yes, it's only the period can be extended by 30 days one time. So there is definition for the extension. We are just making corresponding amendments here. So we do not use clause 21 on the extension for this purpose. If we look at the English version of this paper, on page 3 we have a textual amendment is to correct an error. So these are the amendments concerning Legal Notice 84. Any questions from members? Mr. Tony Jie? A clarification. For the extension period of 30 days, you said that it will be conducted for one time. But for Section 5, bracket 1A, for the 21-day period, is it also going to be extended for once only? Yes, we are now stating clearly that there is a time period, and then the time period can be extended for 30 days. Then what is meant by 21 days? 21 days is the original period, so that period can also be extended. We're saying that there is a time period of 21 days, and then the applicant can provide the investigations or make his case Then for clause 21, we stated clearly that the period can be extended. Now we want to spell out the extension period under the relevant provisions individually. So the 21-day extension will not be affected, and the 30 days extension also will not be affected. So that means extension is only for once. That's the current practice, correct? Yes, that's right. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Ken? Chair, I would like to follow up on our legal advisor's paper to the administration on LN 83. We talked about the instrument there. Under 82C, it will not be promulgated by Gazette. Can you elaborate on that? Legal advisor, do you want to have follow-up question on that? Please speak to the mic. Thank you, Ms. Khan. We have written to the administration concerning the instrument. We asked whether the instrument will be promulgated through Government Gazette so that the public will be aware about the practical guidance. Can the administration explain about the situation? Why don't you go for Government Gazette? Well, thank you. We do not plan to promulgate the instrument through Government Gazette. The reason being that these are practical guidelines and it will be very technical and it will cover the unconventional aircraft trial flights. It will be rather lengthy and technical in nature. For such instruments, it is better to promulgate through the CAD website because it had to be read by the applicants and it has to be issued from time to time. So we think that publication on the CAD website is a suitable arrangement. Well, I have to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Legal advisor, do you want to follow up? If you are not going to go for Government Gazette, so that means it do not need to be scrutinized by the legislature. Well, of course, it is an open document. You will publish it on the CAD website. On Section 3B, the legal advisor asked about CAP 44XC, which covers conventional aircrafts. The DS has pointed out that if need be, we may have further amendments. So am I correct to say that you will issue the practical guidelines, which will not come to the Legislative Council beforehand? You will just publish it in the CAD website. If there is need to amend CAP 44XC and the relevant legislation, then you will come back to the legislature. Is that correct? Yes, that's right. For the current proposed amendment, it only covers the trial flights of unconventional aircrafts. If one day we have to use unconventional aircraft for commercial use, then we need specific legislation for the purpose, and we will come to the Legislative Council. Yes, we need to have specific legislation covering unconventional aircraft, especially if they're going to carry passengers in future. So for the guidance note, it will only cover the trials, and you will authorize the DGCA to approve trial flights of unconventional aircrafts. It's kind of like a sandbox, right? Yes, we will go bow for the sandbox first and then see what to deal with the future situation. So we have completed the scrutiny of this piece of legislation. Now we move to the fourth piece of legislation. It's about the investigation of accidents amendment regulation commencement notice. This is only a commencement notice, Chair. So concerning the legal notice 84, we will stipulate clearly the commencement date. That will be the 25th of July, 2025. So I would like to ask the legal advisor concerning the four pieces of legislation. Do you have further questions concerning the drafting, especially the English version? Chair, we do not find any discrepancies between the English and the Chinese version of the 4 pieces of legislation. Any further questions? If not, we have completed the clause-by-clause examination. Tomorrow, there's the deadline for the submission of from the public for them to submit their opinion to us. If we have received any public submissions, we'll try to look at them, and then we'll refer them to the administration for them to give us a written response. And we will also circulate the written submissions to members. If there is need, we will have another meeting. Otherwise, we have concluded our work. On the 18th of June, I will move these 4 pieces of legislation to extend the scrutiny period to the 4th of July. So the completion date will be the 16th of July. We'll report to the House Committee, and we'll report to them on the 4th of July. And then on the 9th of July, we will promulgate the subsidiary 4 pieces subsidiary legislation. Then we move to agenda item 2, AOB. If there's no further AOB, meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.